Hi, I'm Jeffrey Lunn. Today we have a really fun lecture on a photography subject that I love. It's macro photography, close-up photography. We can do this kind of photography with our grown-up camera with close-up filters, but our cell phones are also very, very good macro cameras. So we'll be talking about both of those in this lecture. I think you're going to find this to be a very fun subject. Macro photography is also called photomacroscopy, and it describes photographing small but visible objects. For general purposes, anytime the size of the subject achieves a greater magnification than 1:1, but does not exceed the naked eye, the result is considered a photomacrograph. We just call it macro photography. Like this bee in flight that was taken by a student of mine. It was actually, he borrowed my extension tube, and this was the very first macro shot he's ever shot in his life. He didn't really get luckier than that all day long. And that shot is about 1:1. In other words, the shot appears on the sensor at the exact same size as the bee. So a photomicrograph or microscopy or micro photography means taking photos of items that are too small to be seen with the naked eye. And this type of photography is usually done with a microscope or some other device. Wilson Bentley amazed the world with his photographs in 1890. Many people claimed that they were fake, so he invited photographers to visit him in Jericho, Vermont. After many photographers and scientists witnessed Bentley working, they gave him the name Mr. Snowflake, and back then it was a good name. Bentley produced over 5,000 high-quality snowflake photos during his lifetime. His collection of prints and glass negatives were donated to the Smithsonian Institution and are on a rotating schedule. So anytime you go there, you're going to see different ones. His work is in the public domain, so graphic artists have thousands of images to use for commercial purposes. Mr. Bentley's quote is famous: "No two snowflakes are the same." We've heard that hundreds of times, and he was the one that said that. Now here's some bits of glass from a Coke bottle found in sand particles on a small remote island off the coast of Java. Actually, I shot this for Discover magazine in 1981. I was on assignment, and they were sending me to some pretty remote areas around the world to show the impact of human habitation, and so I got this Coke bottle glass. It had probably been on the beach washing around for, I don't know, it could have been 60 years. Now, before we get into the regular camera equipment and settings for macro photography, I'd like to mention that an inexpensive USB microscope is available for less than $20. It's not as convenient as a handheld camera because you have to plug it into your computer, but it does work very well, and it has a built-in light. So the one shown below is available on Amazon for PC computers and Mac versions also. So they are great fun. All right, well, here's a shot of seaweed floating in red food coloring that I took with that $19 microscope. It was for a science class that I was teaching school-aged kids, 6th graders, and I recommend this item for curious kids. It's so much fun. All right, let's talk about lenses and optical accessories, because you do not need to be complicated or expensive. This is actually my setup, and it's just over the top. It's really obsessive, actually. I never use it. Normally a camera with a big sensor is preferred for the best quality and general purpose photography, but a small sensor camera is actually better for close-up and macro work. It's got more depth of field and it's easier to handle. So I think cell phones work quite well for kind of close-ups. I can't really say that they're macros because you can't get a 1:1 magnification, but they do work good for close-ups, and it's the least expensive approach that I know of for close-up photography. The large display makes it a good camera for shooting straight down on things. Here I'm in a museum in Europe and they wouldn't let cameras in there. They didn't want any flash, so I got this shot just by laying my cell phone on the glass case. It's pretty sharp. So here's a example showing that a modern cell phone is as sharp as a $2,500 Nikon with a close-up filter. The cell phone, it's a very old cell phone. This was taken many, many years ago, and you can see that it's pretty darn sharp. So many pocket cameras have a close-up feature. These shots were taken with a Lumix pocket camera set on the macro mode, and a used pocket camera is less expensive than a macro lens for a big camera. Now, although the close-up mode on most of these cameras allows for close views, it doesn't achieve true macro magnification, not one-to-one magnification. But for a greater image size, use the close-up mode for photographing small objects, and then you can enlarge the photos later because they are sharp, especially if they're taken in sunlight. For true macro photography, you'll need a camera with interchangeable lenses or a threaded lens barrel to take filters. One way to achieve high magnification of your subject is to increase the distance between your lens and your sensor using extension tubes. These accessories are of very good value. This set of 3 tubes is available from B&H Photo for about $63. Another common tool for macro photography are close-up filters or specialized macro lenses. And now if you're a Nikon user, you can get a really good quality old-style macro lens for less than $100, like the one on the lower left. It's totally manual, just totally manual, but you can set your camera on aperture priority, and then the camera will choose the shutter speed, and you are good to go. That's the way it is with all old Nikon lenses. You can use them on the new digital Nikon cameras. So now there's on the very upper left are the filters that we're going to be using. They're very inexpensive. You can get a set of 4 now. They come in a set of 4 for about $19. The extension tubes, as I mentioned, are about $80. So this photo is taken with the close-up filters that we're selling for. This set was $14. But if you want a set of 4, which I recommend, is $19. The quality is great for the price. These filters can be screwed right onto a lens or held up in front of a pocket camera, and they are really great. They're not sharp out to the edges. They're really only sharp in the center, but that's okay. We can work with that. Another inexpensive accessory is the reversing ring. It enables you to mount a lens onto your camera in a backwards position. So these step-down rings are also available for joining 2 lenses together. The result is a highly magnified image, usually 3:1, up to by 12 times normal magnification using your normal 50mm lens. That's a little too strong for general macro photography, but it's useful for scientific work, water droplets, and bugs. A reversing ring runs about $10. And note that your camera's auto functions will not be usable in this approach. You'll be in total manual operation. You can see that I used that reversing ring and I got that bug face in the upper right. Now this is really a fun thing to do. If you have a rubber lens shade, you can reverse your lens and simply hold it up to your camera using the shade as a gasket to make a light, tight seal. The results are impressive, but you risk getting dirt in the camera, so don't use this technique at the beach. You can see on the left that I've got a rubber lens shade. I've taken off my lens. I'm just holding it up against the camera body, and I'm just moving in real close to that fern, and it's just sharp in the center only, but it'll get you through for super macro shots, and that is a 1:1 macro shot. So my favorite combination includes these 2 inexpensive items. A plastic jug to soften the light and the close-up filters. So what I do is I cut a hole in the top so my lens fits in there snugly, and then I cut the bottom right out of the jug. And then I just walk up really close to whatever I'm photographing, making sure that the shadow from the jug falls onto the subject. And the milk bottle works the best, actually, because it's kind of translucent and it lets a lot of light in there. And so you could be in real harsh lighting situations that would just be too contrasty, but you use that jug, you get real close and you get good shots. So the inexpensive close-up filters work on any lens that has a threaded ring for filters. And an important feature of these filters are that they'll work on both wide-angle and telephoto lenses. So this adds a lot of value to a telephoto zoom lens. So if you put them onto a telephoto lens like a 70-200 that can't focus any closer than 10 feet, you will suddenly be able to focus as close as 20 inches. And that's a great thing for taking pictures of critters that don't allow you to get super close. This picture was taken with a 200mm lens and a +2 close-up filter at a distance of 7 feet. It's just the right distance for bird shots and poisonous snakes. So the exposure settings for macro photography, let's cover that. You will need a fast shutter speed to avoid blurring from camera and subject movement. For handheld outdoor shots, I'd recommend ISO 800 to 1600 and a fast shutter speed, probably around 1,000th of a second, and that you'll be at f8 or f11. For tripod-held studio shots, I just choose a medium ISO like 400 and a slow shutter speed, and you could, go up to f16 as if you want. The thing about macro is it's kind of hard to shoot on a tripod unless you really have a really nice setup, because the focusing is so critical. Sometimes it's just easier to focus by moving the camera back and forth rather than turning the focusing ring. That's what I find. So that's why I shoot with a fast shutter speed. So here's a shot that's on the upper left. It was taken at a 2/50th of a second at f16, and it looked sharp on the LCD, but I did have some camera movement. Fortunately, I took one at 1,000th of a second at f5.6. It has less depth of field, but there's no blur from camera movement. So always choose a fast shutter speed when you're shooting outdoor macro shots, unless you're using a tripod. Let's begin by raising your ISO to about 1,000 or 1,600. Set your mode wheel to shutter priority. It's S mode on Nikon and TV mode on Canon cameras. And this is kind of what you'll see on your LCD, a 1,600th of a second at f8, ISO 1,000. So too much depth of field from f-stops like 16 and 22 make the background too sharp. So this shot on the right was taken at a 2/50th of a second at f16, and I can't really see that bug, and I should have gotten closer to the bug, but in any case, the shot comes off a lot better in the lower example, because I have f8 instead of f16, so that's a lot less depth of field. Here's a closer version of it I've just cropped in. So let's look at, I'm using an 85mm lens here with a +4 filter, and you can see that I've got some blueberries laid out on a ruler. f4.5 in the upper left, only one blueberry is in focus, and in the lower right in f16 they're all sharper, and the background is very, very sharp, and you can see the intermediate shots there, how much a difference every f-stop makes. So typically when I'm shooting macro stuff, I don't like too much depth of field. If I can manage to get my subject in sharp focus, that is good enough for me. I don't care about the background. I'd like the background to be soft. Now on the left is the setup using a Note 5 cell phone, and you can see that there's always a lot of depth of field on cell phones. You really have to get very close to your subject, so you can't expect to be able to control your depth of field with the cell phone.